Hello, good morning. My name is Mohammad Asim. Today we are going to cover one tutorial, that is Docker, right? So today we are going to learn the Docker, what is a Docker and why you want to learn. The basic three steps which we required is that what is the use case of Docker? That means what is Docker and why is Docker, why we are going with the Docker and where is applicable, right? So the thing is what, where, why and where. With this we are going to cover in this tutorial. The first step and the later we are going to cover is what is Docker. As I mentioned that the concept behind this Docker and the what, how is difference between container and the virtual machines. So you have been across the various time there is a virtual machine, right? Virtualization and the understanding of Docker architecture and how you're going to create a Docker file and what are the steps you require to create write in the Docker file in order to create that Docker image, right? So let me add that also, Docker image. Okay, so then Docker uses in real-time real life organization. Overview of the Docker volume. This I'll give you a basic how you're going to create a Docker volume and you're sharing between all different Docker containers. Okay, you can attach to the Docker also containers. And overview of the Docker hub. This is a Docker hub is a general is a repository, right? It's a Docker centralized repository where you can store your Docker containers which you have created, and you can create an account over there and you can push your Docker images to your Docker hub. Okay, so it can be public as well as private. So you have two use cases. You can make it public and the private. Okay, you can share this Docker images to all your friends or your colleagues in your organization based on your use cases. Okay, and we will cover and we will create one Docker container, and we'll fetch one Docker image, and we will create one Docker container, and we will deploy and we will access this one, right? So the first step, moving here ahead. So there is a to differentiate between, as I mentioned, that what is a container and what is a Docker. Okay, the container is a container like virtual machines. Okay, it's simple like a virtual machine. Okay, and the Docker is used to create these virtual machines. Okay, you got my point. Container, in this container you can host your application, you can host any other XYZ applications in that container. And what we require to create this container, we require a Docker tool, that is application, right? This is a Docker application you require to create these containers. Okay, so now we want to learn the Docker, right? If you want to make a container of your application, you want to make it containerize your application, you should learn this called Docker application, right? Docker tool. So Docker is a tool that performs operating system level virtualization known as containerization. Okay, it is first released in 2013, so it's almost 10 years before it has released, and it was adopted by IT industry and it is boomed, and all the application now you are seeing as Docker containers. Okay, if I give some of the references of the applications, the next place is Dockerized. If you're going for a Geo on which is IPL is hosted, that is Dockerized. If you're going for Hotstar, there is a multiple movies, everything is published, right? That is Dockerized. So for these are the basic three application which I have given, that is Dockerized. Okay, so there is multiple, all the application in the current scenario are Dockerized. Okay, and the Docker is a tool to design make containers, as I before mentioned over here, which you can deploy any type of application easily. Okay, the Docker uses union file system which is a LAID. Okay, Docker perform OS level virtualizations. Okay, operating system level virtualization. How is going to perform this? Let's go and check over here. Okay, where the Docker will be used. So the basic IT flow is that in your development stage, what we are going to do is you are going to first is what you're going to do in the sense, let me just take a pen so that I can explain you. Let me take, no, sorry. Okay, the first step is that you're going to design, right? Let me take this. First, what you're going to do, you're going to design your application, then you're going for the development. Okay, the Docker used in the case of deployment. Okay, when you pass your development stage, when you require a deployment, then in that case the Docker is used. Okay, so I have already specified in which stage that Docker will be used, right? So this, hopefully this also is clear for you. Let me go, and now you're going to see what is the differentiate between virtual machine and the Docker. Okay, if you overcome before that Okay, one Docker, if you have a laptop, then we are going to install XYZ application to make it virtual machine, right? So on your laptop itself, you can run Windows, you can run Ubuntu also using virtualization. Okay, if you're going for the virtualization, you can use multiple application which is easily available to create a virtual machine on your laptop. Okay, so on virtualization, what happens if you're assuming that there is a one server, right? So in our use case, the server we are using, we are assuming that this is our laptop, right, or a server. On that, what you are going to do, we are going to install the host OS. Host OS in the sense the operating system. You can install Windows, you can install Linux. On the Linux operating system, either you can install Ubuntu, or you can install CentOS, or you can install any operating system, okay, based on your use cases. On that, we will install one hypervisor. During the virtual machine, hypervisor will be installed. On that, whatever the layers should be working as that the guest operating system, right? In the guest operating system, we will install all the dependency of this OS system. On that, we will deploy one application, that is B. Okay, if you want to create one more that application, like for example, let me take it over here. I'm saying that here I'm going to use Ubuntu, right? Ubuntu. So what I'm doing, I'm going to install Ubuntu on this virtual machine. I'll create one virtual machine and I will install Ubuntu. Okay, on that Ubuntu, I'm going to install one application on the Ubuntu operating system. Okay, and the second, I'm going to install one more use case, right? I'm going to take as CentOS, right? CentOS. Okay, and I'm going to install the CentOS on this virtual machine 2, and I'm going to install application A on this. Okay, so what happened on this use case, so if you're going for virtualization, so you know the basic thing is that when you are doing the virtualization, it will take some of the hardware in this. Okay, so you have to take, it will take, whenever I'm going to install, it will take 4 GB, 20 GB, right, of your hardware. Okay, of your hardware operating system. So it requires, you have to give 20 for this and 20 GB hard disk for this. Okay, and I have to give mandatory that 4 GB of the operating system, right, for this RAM, 4 GB RAM over here. This is how I'm going to split. Okay, and I'm going to create from 8 GB of my machine, right? For example, of I have 40 GB of hard disk, right, on this server. From here, what I'm doing, I'm creating 2 virtual machines, then I'm assigning 20 GB for one machine and 20 GB for one machine, right? So this is how you're going to create your virtual machine, right? And in this case, I'm going to install the application. As I said, let's say one website I have installed on this website 1 and website 2. In this use case, what happened if you install one website on this, but my website is not very heavy and it doesn't require 4 GB of the memory to run this application, and we don't require 20 GB of the storage for this application. But we are going with the virtual machines, right? We are going to virtualize our machine. In this case, this is a prerequisite that you have to give 20 GB of your space. Okay, of your space, and the RAM as 2 GB or 4 GB in use cases. So my application is using only 20% of my resources. Okay, 80% of my resources is going to waste, right? So here also, for example, my application is taking 20% of this defined VM machine, right? So 80% of my VM resources are going unused. Okay, so this was a drawback of using virtualization, and this 80% of these resources I cannot give to another virtual machine because this is already booked during configuration of virtual machines. Okay, this was a drawback mainly which the solutions came with virtualizations, okay, which came with a Docker. In this Docker, the Docker concept is that whatever the server or the machine which you're using, on that there is a host OS system. On that, the Docker engine is installed. Okay, the daemon, right, which we call daemon, right, the document. On that, we are going to deploy our application, the same application 1 2 3 4. Okay, here we are not going to split or the define the your hard disk, right? The, let's say I don't want 8 GB of 8 GB of what I mentioned before, that I don't have 8 GB of storage, I don't require. Okay, I don't require 4 GB RAM over here, that I have to mention before making my application, right, as a Docker container, right? This I don't require. So we have come with the solution that whatever the Docker container is running, it will take the resource of your machine itself from here. Okay, for example, if I have my let's say 8 GB of my machine, right, and I have 20 GB of this one, right? So whichever application required maximum load, it will take from here itself. Okay, it will take from here. So I don't require pre-request or pre-configured to used on this application. Okay, if I close this application also, the resources which I was using, that is going to release to your server itself. Okay, your VM for your server itself, right? Here in this case, if you're going to run your application, if you're not going to run your application on this virtual machine, your resources will not be received resource to your parent server, that is parent directory, right? So this overcome with that case. Okay, so hope this is basic information and your concept has been cleared. Okay, so let me go below here. Docker is the setup platform as a platform product, like PaaS, platform as service, that use operating level virtualization to deliver your software right, in the package called container. So we can deploy multiple container on this. We don't require to define the resources. What are the resources is available in your host operating system, that is host server or the virtual machine or your laptop. It will take based on your load from here itself. Okay, so what happened, container isolated, as I say that this is isolated container 1, container B, A and B, there is no interlink between these two. It can have your own host operating system. Let's say this container is this operating system this container is using Python, this container is using like JavaScript, right? So there is no issue of this dependency issues. It have own operating system in this and it has own operating system in this. There is no conflict. You can deploy multiple container on your server. Okay, here for the basic simple, and let's go for your Docker. Okay, it is a hardware, it can be any operating any server or a VM or your laptop, right? Here what we have using, we required to mention what is operating system, the container engine, and we are going to 1 2 3 runtime, right? So in our use case, what we are doing, we are, as I mentioned above also, we are using host OS. Okay, the Linux operating system, the we are container image, we are using Docker, right? Docker engine, we are using Docker engine over here. We are going to deploy multiple applications. On that we are using programming language as Node.js, Go language and .NET. It's all three are runtime and so isolated with each other. Okay, there is no conflicts between application 1, application 2, application 3. Okay, this is how it's defined. What are the benefits of Docker is there? So first thing is that it can provide you OS level virtualization. You don't require to install operating system, like we are not going to install any operating system. It may be Linux or Windows on your Docker. Okay, on Docker engine basically, which we are going to install over here, right? We used to first install Ubuntu, first you are going to install CentOS, then you can start your application, you can deploy your application. In this case, that has been eliminated. Okay, and you can really you can no need to install pre-allocate pre-request your RAM allocation, or you no need to install any you are not going to pre-request the storage also. As I mentioned before, it is a less cost, it is less less weight, and it fast to fire up. You can spin your container easily. It does not require very loaded, right? And where we can run on the physical, that is virtual machine or physical server, virtualization, virtual machine on the cloud. Okay, you can reuse your Docker images also. You can share with each other, your users on your organization. Okay, you can create machines in less times. What are the components of Docker, right? The first thing is Docker image. okay, which is contain your operating system, okay, and very small and also negligible and softwares, okay. So this, let me just, okay. And the Docker container is a machine that created from a Docker engine, a Docker image, right? And the steps what we required is to create a Docker image, okay, that is known as Dockerfile. Okay, in the file you will define some steps how to create XYZ 1 2 3 4. From that step we will create a one Docker image, okay. And where we can store this Docker image, you can store in the Docker Hub, which is the registry, and you can store all your images publicly or privately, okay. Docker daemon is a Docker service, okay, on which all your background Docker engine is working on, okay. So if you check the Docker workflow, okay, Docker workflow, so let me just add it over here. Let me erase. Okay. So what happened, the developer or DevOps guy, right? DevOps guy will write a Docker file, okay, Docker file. From the Docker file we will create a Docker image, right? In the Docker file we will specify some steps, 1 2 3 4 5 steps. First step is that from, so what we required, operating system, right? Which operating system your code is there, you will be using the same operating system. Then you will write from where to copy your code, right, of your code of your application, okay. Then you will write some commands, okay, cmd commands to run your Docker container, right? So this will be specified. From the Docker image you will create a Docker container, okay. This Docker image you can push to Docker Hub, where this is a registry, right, registry, okay, where you can push to Docker Hub, okay. And here you can keep it your images as public and private, okay. You can keep your images public and private. And the second use case also is that you can fetch the Docker image which is available, okay, which is available in Docker Hub itself, okay. So you can take like Ubuntu operating system image, you can take Nginx operating system, Nginx web server reverse proxy image, you can use database operating images which is available in Docker Hub, okay. This is a basic, okay. So when let's go and flow, for example, what happened, the basic flow is whenever the developer or the DevOps engineer write a Docker file, with the Docker file we will create a Docker image. With the Docker image, let me delete this and start again. The first step, what we will write a one Docker file. In the step we will specify multiple steps. With that we will create a Docker image. With the Docker we will create a Docker container, and this container, what we will do, we will push this Docker image to your Docker Hub. From the Docker Hub, what we will do it, from here we will pull the images in your multiple environment. You can use a staging environment, you can use in the Docker test environment, right? In the test environment, what happened, we will fetch all this Docker images which we stored privately, right, in our Docker Hub. So we will have an account over here. With that account, what we will do, we will fetch in the multiple environment in our organization, okay. The same image, whatever the image available over here, we will fetch from this and we will deploy directly, okay. So what happened, we will create a one as I mentioned, that one image, and we will store in our Docker Hub repository. From there you can share in multiple environment. You can share in the dev environment, you can share in the staging environment, you can share in a let's say in a PPE, right, pre-prod environment. Even you can share with the production environment based on your flow of your organization, okay. This is also clear. Let's go for the next step. So take the image for the Docker Hub. The way to create a Docker images is that we can take the Docker image directly from the Docker Hub, which is which is available publicly, and from that image we can create the Docker container, okay. And the second step is that Docker image you can create from the Docker file, as I mentioned before. You write the few steps over this and you can create the Docker image. So what are the steps? What is the Docker file now? Okay, we will see what is a Docker file. Docker file is a text file with the instruction of to build the image. To create these images, we are giving some specific instructions, Okay, so that whenever we run some step with a command, that has to create a Docker image. Okay, the basic the basic required the steps are, we will mention from, run and cmd. Okay, first what we will do, we will create a one Docker file, name is a Dockerfile. We have to create a one Docker file. In that we will add some of the steps, instructions, and we will build this Docker file to create an image, and with that image we will create a Docker container. Okay, this is fine. And what is Docker volume? The Docker volume is a volume inside, is the directory inside your container. Okay, first we have to declare a directory as a volume, then we can share this volume. Okay, so if we stop the container also, still we can access the volume. Okay, the volume will be created in one container. You can declare the directory as a volume while creating the directory. Okay, you cannot create a Docker volume from the existing container. You got my point? From the existing container you cannot create the volume. So what happened, you have to specify before itself. Okay, inside your container you can share one volume across your number of containers, right? If you have, let's say, 1 2 3 containers, one container you're running one application, one your container is one, let's say one container is serving your payment gateway, right? Payment gateway of your application. One container is giving for the user registration. So you can share across one volume across your in your containers. Okay, so Docker Hub, as mentioned before also, what is Docker Hub? Okay, as I mentioned before, this is a Docker Hub. Okay, where you have all your images available. Okay, if you check Docker official images, if you will see there is a lot of images available. You have Postgres image, you have memcached image, you have appline image, SQL, Ubuntu, Nginx. There is all images are available. You can directly go and fetch these images. Okay, so this is how you are going to see. So we have covered the theory part. So let's go and cover one labs, small labs, to make you understand that what are the, how you can create your Docker, you can install the Docker, and how you're going to create a one Docker image from your Docker file, and we are going to access this, right? So this, let's go and we will see what are the steps required. Okay, the thing is that the first step what we required is that what do you required to, let's go for the lab. The prerequisite is that we should have the AWS account with us. Okay, so I do have a free account which is a free, so we don't require to pay anything for the AWS. Then we will create a one EC2 instance, then we will require Docker installation. I will show you, and we will take some code from the GitHub repository which is available with us, right? GitHub repos. So from there we will create a one Docker file, then we will create a Docker image, then we will create a Docker image container. Okay, so quickly what we will do, we will go and we will create a one EC2 instance. If you don't have the free tier account, you can go in my channel and you can access from there. The video is there how to create a how to create your first your account, right? So I'll be taking Ubuntu as operating system because the Git is already installed in this, so we don't require. We will take T2 small because the Docker required minimum T2 small, right? So click on installation, launch installation. So I have not installed, not given the key, so let me give the key. What I will do it, I will create a new new key pair. Then I will give the name, create new key pair. No, let me just delete this. So let me check, do I have in the download folder anything over here? Let me see the download folder. Python tpem, right? Python tpem. So I have an existing key over here. If you don't have, then just you can go and you can create over here, right? So I'll be using same, and I'll be opening SSS2, you know, this everything. So I'll click a launch instance. Okay, so I'll wait for the few seconds. So okay, my application, my EC2 instance is up and running, right? So it's taking pending state, but it will refresh here. It states that it is starting. So we'll go and we will access. So here I'm going to use EC2 instance, sorry, I'm going to use Mobile Extreme as SSH client app, third-party app, which I'm going to use to connect to my EC2 instance, right? So I'll take Ubuntu, then I will click private key, and I will give the key path, so which is there over here. Let me see, this is the one which I have given. So click over here, then you connect to your machines. So it will validate your authentications, right? It will authenticate you as a genuine person with the against your key. So first thing what I will do it, just I will update sudo apt update, right? The first command you require to update your packages first time when we are configuring your EC2 instance, right? The first time. So this is operating system which is Ubuntu operating system has been installed on this, and this is my private IP which is showing over here, and it's showing the 2 GB RAM which we have used for this, and this is CPUs, right? So the first thing what we will do it, we will change the host name of this, sudo host name. So my host name is this is IP address, so I want to change host name ctl set host name to I'll give it as Docker, right? So it's successfully done. So to reflect the changes, I'm using bin bash, so it will change the reflection. So we have changed the hostname of our machines to hide our IP, right? The second step is that I want to check is my Docker installed or no. So here I don't have a Docker installed on this machine. So what I have to do it, first I have to install the Docker on this. So I'll copy. If you don't have this Linux operating system, it's very updated, it will provide you the command to install this. So I'm using Docker apt to install the Docker. So it will install the Docker over here. It will take few seconds. The Docker installation will be done because we require the Docker to make our application containerization, right? So the second prerequisite, this also we have done, we have created, we have installed Docker. So we require the code over here, right? We require the code. So what I will do it, I will simply switch to Docker user, to the super user. And if you LL over here, you don't have anything, right? So what I will do it, I will create a one directory, or let's say let it be over here, no issue for that. The second thing is that we have to give some of the permission after installing the Docker. So what I'm doing, I am giving the permission. Let me show you that also. So if I exit over here, if I say docker -v, so it should provide me that Docker version is already installed. So in the runtime, what I've so let's say, so what I have to do it, I have to add the Ubuntu into the Docker group. So I should not have any future permissions, right? So user table does not exist, Ubuntu sudo docker Ubuntu. Okay, so I have done a mistake, so I haven't added. So let me correct in the document also, so that if I give this document, I should not face any error. Ubuntu, right? So this we already have. So then what we will do it, we will give the root directory. Okay, we will see if I face any issues, then we will do it, right? So I'm going back over here. So now let me see the Git is installed or no. So the Git is already installed. By default, Ubuntu will provide you Git installation when you are installing the any EC2 instance with the Git operating system. Okay, so the second step, I read the code, right? So without the code, you cannot run your you cannot create a Docker image, right? You require the code of your application, so which is available in my GitHub repositories. So here is a GitHub repository. Simply I'll go and I will copy the this Flask app Python. So I will take the copy of my path, right? So I'll go here and I will use git command, git clone, and I'll give the URL of my repository. Hit enter. It will start clone all your code into your EC2 instance. If you LL over here, you should be able to see that there is a Flask directory has been created. In this directory I have a code. So I will go here in the directory. Okay, if you LL over here already we have specified created one Docker file. So let me see the Docker file instructions. So this is how you create the these instructions. If you go in my document, which I have specified, there is a basic things you have to mention from run and cmd commands, right? Here I'm using Python because this is a Python based application. So I'm taking the Python OS operating system, right? The Python programming. I need the Python image, which I'm specifying 3.1 slim, and the work directory I'm specifying this is a work directory as app in my container. I'm copying this all the code of my existing directory to this working directory, which is I have mentioned this app, and then I'm using the command. Okay, the command is given as to run your application pip install no cache directory requirement of txt, right? So what I'm doing, I'm taking I'm installing all my requirements, right, dependency of my application, then I'm exposing on 7000, then I'm giving these commands to run my application python run.py. Okay, so the next step what we have to do it, so we have to create the docker image of this docker file. Okay, so what we will do it, I will go and I will take the command simple command, right, and I'll copy over here. So what I'm doing is that I'm building the docker image. Okay, docker image, and docker image, docker build is a command. Let me, okay, docker build, let me add docker is a command used, docker build command is used to create your docker image, right, from your docker file. And I'm giving the dot in the sense because in the current directory I'm working and have all the code over here itself. Okay, so from this docker file create a docker container. Okay, so what we will do it, as I mentioned that we are creating a docker image out of our docker file. If you hit enter over here, so it will take few steps, right, it will take few steps, and it will take all the steps instruction which we have given in docker file, and it will create a docker image out of this. So let me show you that also, right? So it's installing all the dependency which we have specified over there. If you ll over here, if you see what the requirement in this we have specified, so we will see that we required the dependency for this application is flash and basic versions which are specified, right? So if you check here docker images, so you should be able to see one docker image with the name of what we have specified over there. So here if you check it over here, so now it's showing that you the denied permission, right? So this is how you can fix it with this the command denied permission, right? So let me just add it. So I will add the docker here, right? So if I check with this, so still also is there. So let me docker ps var. Okay, so it's showing that I don't have the access to var run docker.socket, right? This we can fix it with this permission of this one, right? So what I will do is just I will add over here, then I will give the 600 rewrite, right? So now if you check now I have given the permission like var run docker socket, right? So if I check with this, so I should be able to fix. Still also is not there, so that I don't have the access for the Ubuntu, right? So permission is not yet fixed. So what I have to do it while trying to connect the docker is not there. So what I will do it, I will use the root or the Ubuntu shown Ubuntu, right? Ownership, and I will give it over here. So if I check with the command docker images, so this is how you fix it. So if you check here, I have two images. One is the python, this is directly coming from the github, so this is no issue. We have created our code with this, and we have created the docker image out of our docker application, right? So this also is done. So it's done before 1 minute, right? It has the image size of 137 MB. So now the way our docker image is created. Now if I check docker ps hyphen command to check the docker containers, so we don't have any docker container over here. So what we will do it, we will create a one docker container out of our docker image. So here is a step how you can create your docker image. So simply what we required is that you're going to docker run, right? You're going to use docker run, then -d -p, right? Then we are specifying the path 7000, the port number mapping. Okay, port number mapping. Then what we are doing, we are giving the docker image name. So docker image name is this what we have created, and we are giving the current directory, right? This is how you're going to specify. and we missed out to give the tag also. I'll give it as tag as a latest, right? So if you enter the hit enter, so it will create a Docker container out of our Docker image. So if I check with this second command, you should be able to see that one Docker container is working, right? So with this image, we have created the Docker container, which is running with the port mapping as 7000 of a Docker container and exposing to this EC2 instance of 7000. So now if we check with the commands, right, in the networking command, so with you're using the tool to check in the local CLI is our application is working or no, right? So we require the tool as netstat. So we are installing the netstat, then we will check the tool over here. So let me zoom out so you should be able to see it, right? So let me zoom over here. So you are seeing that our application one is running on 7000, right? And if I go use, let me switch to root sudo su so that I can use this command netstat, because all the application will not be displayed over here. So it will show you that 7000 is working on the Docker proxy, right? So the Docker is using 7000 port number on which our application is running. So if you check over here, this also showing 7000. Okay, so our application is working for perfectly. Now what we required is that we required to open the ports, right? So security firewall. So if you go on the EC2 instance, then if you click over here the security group, then if you go for inbound rule, then you can add a rule over here is the custom TCP. Then you can add 7000, then you can make it publicly, then save the rule over here. Then if you go back over here to EC2 instance, because I required the IP address, so I'll just click over here and I will take the IP address of this instance, then I will keep over here on my 7000, my application is exposed. If you click over here, so you will be able to see that our application is working fine on this 7000 port. This is how you can create your Docker, right? Docker image of your application. And you can push to your image, right? This is how we have done. We have specified some commands in the Dockerfile, then we have created one Docker image. From that image we have deployed the Docker container on EC2 instance. We have used EC2 instance. If you want to access, then we can access in the firewall. We have to open the port numbers on which you are going to access this, which we have mapped, and we are going to access on the browser side. Okay, so don't forget to share, subscribe, and share with your friends. We are going to continue this Docker series, and we will covering up with the second Docker tutorial. Thank you. Please don't forget to share and subscribe.